Hey everybody, we're back here at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook. He's Jason, I'm Chucky for the Sports Betting Podcast. Bookends powered by STN Sports, and it's a big week in pro football as we're week 15. It's hard to believe, Jay, that the season has kind of progressed as much as it has. I mean, it seems like we were just talking about the first month of the season. But before we kind of dive into the pros, college football, the playoffs are set right now, and I know from our end, and I'm a huge college football fan. I know we both are. And the bowl games had always been like so exciting. And unfortunately, the last couple of years, they haven't meant quite the same thing because kids getting into the transfer portal or declaring for the NFL draft, you just saw games that just weren't quite as meaningful as they were before. I know there were still some kids that competed and played hard, and I appreciate that, but it wasn't the same as what we were used to as we kind of were coming up through the industry, and bowl games were bowl games. They're a little bit different now. But with the college football playoff now, you've got some games that really mean something. And I think from a handle perspective and the hype in the room and the atmosphere and all the props on the app, I think it's going to be crazy with those games as we move forward.
Yeah, really looking forward to the 4 playoff games and then the subsequent, the following New Year's 4 playoff games, the 2 and the 1 to lead us to that national championship. And obviously after the seeding show happened, there's all the conversations about the teams that are getting the bye weeks, the teams that are not getting the bye weeks. And I still think it's very interesting that as we go into this first set of games that we have, all 4 games are over a touchdown favorite, and we have one of the games even over a 10-point favorite. So that separation between the top 6 teams in the country and the next 6 teams in the country, there's still a massive separation there. And I think even as we head into the following week, as long as the favorites hold pat, we're going to see some touchdown favorites against those teams that had the bye weeks. But really excited about a college football playoff. I think the games are absolutely fantastic. We as the Sportsbook will be looking for one of those underdogs to pull the outright upset because I think the teaser prices shape up really, really good for everyone to play those money lines or those teasers on those favorites. And you brought it up, the rest of the bowl schedule over the last 3 years has been somewhat disappointing. Really hard, and it's not that the games aren't being played, it's that they're more of, we'll call it exhibition games for these teams versus playoff games for these teams. And it's very, very important to win bowl games, but the number of players that are opting out, the number of players that are in the transfer portal, the number of coaches that are continuously on the move in this kind of bowl season just kind of disrupts the polls, and that's why it's hard to make lines. It's hard to make totals, hard to make money lines. So we'll get that stuff up and out there for betting, but the bowl season definitely has lost some of its luster.
I think it's more like, we can put them up, but the games that are, a ways away now, it's hard. Even I've heard from guests other side of the counter, it's hard to make that bet because they're not sure if there is going to be guys that still enter the portal or not, or are going to declare for the NFL draft. I mean, we saw it this morning. Michigan had a cornerback that declared for the NFL draft. So you're going to see more and more of that, and it does make it hard, not only for us, but I know for you guys as well. But they are up right now, all the bowl games, and we'll be increasing the limits as we get closer to each game. But it's really hard to make a number when you're not sure of who's going to be in and who's going to be out. But anyway, again, excited about the playoffs. All right, now we're going to dive into a little pro football. Crazy week last week. As we talk about, we're always looking for that big money line dog to come through, and we got teased. The Browns, the Jets, the Panthers, the Falcons. I mean, it was like we were in the back. We need one of those dogs, and we couldn't get one of them to win. But in the afternoon, we became huge LA Ram fans against the Buffalo Bills, who had just been red hot, and the Rams scored 44 points, and we had to sweat out literally the onside kick at the end of the game because the Rams had missed an extra point to actually win that game. But kind of a crazy week 14 last week where the Panthers almost upset the Eagles. We saw the Bills get beat. The Chiefs won on a doink at the end of the game, so some craziness happened.
Well, and then let's not forget about Monday night with another ending of a game that you couldn't fathom, to come up and write the script of a blocked punt to a touching, to the Bengals get the ball and go down and score. The Cowboys and these teams have just found new ways to lose football games, and it's getting a lot of money lines home for those of you to bet in the money line favorites. They've been absolutely fantastic for you this year.
All right, so let's dive in. Thursday night football. Big NFC West battle. The Rams at the 49ers. Rams won an earlier meeting between these two teams in LA, 27-24. Rams come off the upset win against Buffalo. San Francisco demolishes the Bears. And I think the fact that Seattle's only 8-5, maybe a little bit of surprise that they're in first place, that it's left the door open for other teams. And I think the important part here is that one of these two teams will win. And the Seahawks are a dog on Sunday night to the Packers. So if they lose, it really creates kind of a bottleneck at the top in that division for especially who wins here. Right now, you see the Niners were a 2.5-point favorite. It's actually ticked up now to a 3-point favorite, but a really interesting matchup on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, and one of the things you look at is the power rating or the point spread of the San Francisco 49ers team. We see them go on the road and get lit up by the Green Bay Packers. Then they go to the snow game in Buffalo. They get absolutely destroyed there. They lose Christian McCaffrey. They seem to be playing in a lost season,
right,
and the season is done. They come home, and they're a 4 to 4.5-point favorite over Chicago Bears, and the Chicago Bears are heavily bet against them, driving that game down to the San Francisco 49ers, a 3-point favorite over the Bears at home. And then we have the Rams, a 4.5-point dog at home to the Bills, play an absolutely fantastic game from the offensive side of the football,
right,
with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp combining with Matthew Stafford to put one of the more electrical games together to be able to knock off this Buffalo Bills team. And obviously Josh Allen, 3 touchdown passes, 3 rushing touchdowns. The week after,
if you had him in fantasy, you definitely won your week.
The week after, he's the first quarterback to throw, receive, and rush for a touchdown. So 2 weeks in a row with Josh Allen pulling up some crazy records. But the point being made is the Rams are being bet against the Bills. Now the Rams go on the road, and they're a 2.5, 3-point dog to the Niners, which is the same scenario the Chicago Bears were just a week ago. So the Niners beating the Rams inflates that power rating that much to where they're now another 3-point favorite over the Rams, a team that they lost to earlier in the season. So I'm a little bit, and again, you can speak to the records to where we talk about this Niners team, and I talked about it when they were going to Buffalo, that their backs were up against the wall. Well, really, now their backs are up against the wall, because if they lose to this Rams team, that puts the Rams to 8-6. That'll put them to 6-8 with only 3 games to go. You talked about Seattle sitting out there at 8-5.
They might not be able to overcome it if they lose here.
But for the Rams, this is the get-back game. I mean, they play Seattle at the end of the regular season. So Seattle, you talked about it, at home. They play Green Bay this week. They stay at home next week against Minnesota. They travel to Chicago. So the NFC
on a primetime game
is gonna stay a big part of who wins the West. And then they finish up at the Rams. The Rams at San Francisco this week, if they can get that win, they then go at the Jets, and then they finish up at home against Arizona and at home against Seattle. So if you like this division, you feel like they can win this game, and the Green Bay can knock off. This is the game for the Rams. And then on the San Francisco side of things, while they can get back in this race with a win here and hopefully a Green Bay win, they still have to go to Miami. They play home against Detroit, and then they have to travel to Arizona. So I do think of the 3 teams, San Francisco sits with the toughest schedule.
Yeah, I agree. This is a huge game, though. If the Rams can win this game, it really puts them in a good spot to maybe sneak in and win the NFC West.
Well, the way Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, if they can come out and play the way they did last week,
they're great.
You could argue they could play with the Eagles and the Lions, but that defense has got to fix some things up. Now we know that they couldn't stop Josh Allen, and Brock Purdy is not Josh Allen.
Nobody can stop Josh Allen.
They're going to have to throw the football. They're going to have to find a way to stop Jennings. They're going to have to stop Kittle. The new, Garendo and that running back position might be a little bit banged up. But this has consistently been a very, very close game. These teams play close games, and it kind of comes down to that last possession of who's going to take these Rams-Niners games home.
Like I said earlier this season in L.A., 27-24 Ram final. A couple of interesting betting trends here. Rams have gone over 4 of the last 5 times they've played in San Francisco. San Francisco is 4-1 straight up in their last 5 games when they're playing the Rams at home. So just a couple of things to kind of look at when you look at this game, which is a big rivalry, as Jay said, kind of a close matchup over the last couple of years. We're going to jump to Sunday now and look at some of the marquee matchups. One of the ones I have down is Miami at the Texans. This is a game Miami, they have to win out every single game right now and hope they can get some help It's a Texan team that, although they're kind of running away with the AFC South, they haven't been nearly as dominant as last year. I thought C.J. Stroud's definitely taken a step back. I know they've had the injuries. If it was to Mixon, if it was to Collins, Stroud's been banged up a little bit. So they've been Stephon Diggs is out for the year. So they've been missing some of those key components on offense. Not the same team. They're a 3-point favorite against a Dolphin team that has to win out, I think, to have a chance at a wild card spot.
Yeah, and we saw Miami struggle last week. Could have made the argument that they should have absolutely lost to the Jets. Devontae Adams stays in bounds. All kinds of things that could have happened for the Jets to win that game. But obviously Miami hangs in there and is able to steal the game. But you question what this team is doing on offense. You know, we used to see it be the Tyreek Hill down the field,
right,
Waddle down the field, Achane out of the backfield with these big plays. And we'll call it the explosive plays, are kind of just gone from the Miami offense. It's more of a dink and dunk, and it's Jonnu Smith, the tight end, that's kind of their go-to guy in big situations. But again, when you have all those weapons in Hill and Achane and Waddle and Tagovailoa healthy, they're a scary team, and they look scary on paper. But now they travel on the road, again, staying indoors, so we're not going outdoors,
right,
and traveling to Houston. But then they've really, really struggled on the road. They've been an under team, 6 of their 7
Which is hard to believe for that
road
offense.
games. They're 6 or 7 on the under, meaning they're just not putting the points up. And again, you can see this Texan team coming off the bye week, getting things right. And if the New York Jets, with no Breece Hall, were able to kind of find some holes in that Miami secondary, find some holes with Braden Allen and Isaiah Davis running the football, you got to think Houston saw those things in the bye week and are going to look to exploit them against the Dolphins.
I'm kind of surprised
that
week. Number is as low as it is. I thought it would come out a little bit higher.
Well, again, it's scary because you know you have those offensive weapons for the Dolphins to go up against. And I just think that whether it's Tyreek Hill, whether the age has hit him, he's not the Tyreek Hill that we've seen.
Well, he's been
for the
injured.
last
He's been
4 or
playing
5
with an
years.
injury
Yes.
The entire year. A couple of interesting betting trends. You hit on it. Miami has gone under 6 of their last 7 road games. They're 4-1, however, straight up. Their last 5 games, only loss coming on Thanksgiving night at Green Bay. Houston 6-2 straight up in their last 8 games at home, and they're a very small favorite here. So just a couple of kind of trends to look at. We're going to look at a big game now. Love this one. Man, 2 teams that are in first place. The Pittsburgh Steelers at the Philadelphia Eagles. Steelers are on top of the AFC North at 10-3. Eagles are on top of the NFC East at 11-2. Eagles have the second longest winning streak in the league at 9 straight, and they're 5-1 at home. Steelers are 5-2 on the road, so 2 of their 3 losses have all come on the road. Eagles are kind of in that dead zone. They're not a field goal favorite. They're not a touchdown favorite. They're a 5-point favorite here against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Well, we'll talk about the Eagles first. Obviously, they've been absolutely rolling. Have the win against Baltimore where they start slow and, again, finish great. And Hurts and Barkley look absolutely fantastic. They come home as a big 13-point favorite over the Carolina Panthers and played well, but again, they're one Xavier Legette catch away from the Panthers stealing that game and walking away with a victory. And you starting to see, remember, this team was 8-0 last year and then absolutely collapsed and fell apart. And they're winning all these games, but on the sideline, you see this team is still not happy with themselves.
There's some internal issues.
A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, who returned from his absence being healthy, and they lose Goddard to injury. But they're just not clicking on all cylinders on offense. And when I say that, it's not a Barkley and Jalen Hurts issue because they are running the football. They're number 1 rushing team in the National Football League. They can absolutely run the ball. And what that does is that absolutely helps their defense, and their defensive rankings are absolutely fantastic as well because their opponents are really never on the field because the Eagles have that time of possession. But as we move forward at the end of the year and as we move into the playoffs, Jalen Hurts is going to have to find a way to throw the football and win a game with his arm and finding A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. And this might be the game that they need to do it right away because the Steelers have been pretty good.
It's not easy against the Steelers defense, though. I mean, the Steelers defense is really good.
Well, we've seen the Steelers defense have that leaky downfield protection. We saw Jameis Winston not so much this past week. Again, doing what Jameis Winston does and his turnovers. We saw it again in
on
Denver,
the primetime game, we saw him have some success.
In Denver and Seattle. But against this in the snow game, all the downfield passes, even this week, some downfield shots are there against this Steelers secondary. We'll see if the Eagles try and take advantage and look for A.J. Brown down the field, look for Devonta Smith down the field and develops a little bit more of that passing game. It should be there. With the fact that you have to bring those linebackers up, you have to bring those safeties up to try and stop Saquon Barkley. So that leaves A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith one-on-one, headed against those secondary guys, and I think Jalen Hurts just needs to take those shots.
It seems like the Eagles thrive on the soap opera, all the kind of stuff that's going on behind the scenes. You have to remember they were 2-2, and there was a lot of kind of discussion that Sirianni might be gone, and they've gone on this long winning streak since that time. They're not completely out of getting an opportunity to maybe get the number 1 seed in the NFC if somehow the Lions stub their toe a little bit. But it just seems like this Eagles team likes that kind of controversy. They seem to play better.
And just from a Pittsburgh standpoint, I mean, they're doing kind of the exact same thing that the Eagles do, right? They run the football, control the football, have that ground offense, and then try to go win it with Russell Wilson not making mistakes in the passing game. However, these last couple of weeks, he's been much more of a throwing quarterback than the Najee Harris, Jalen Warren kind of running game.
I have to think he ends up getting a deal from them. I mean, you really look at Tomlin again. I know we talked about it earlier. They were 4-2 with Justin Fields. He made the decision to go to Russell Wilson, and Russ has been great. I mean, when he first came back, he was good. Then he kind of was, so-so. But over the last 3 weeks, he's been really good.
And I know you're going to give some controversial stats there in that.
I am.
Pittsburgh 7-1
against the number, right? Yep.
In their last 8 games. However, what are the Eagles in their last 5?
5-0 against the spread in their last 5 games when playing at home against Pittsburgh. One other interesting trend, and Jay kind of talked about it, is that Pittsburgh defense so dominant at home, but on the road, Pittsburgh has gone over 5 straight games. So maybe you get some scoring in this game as well. Now we're going to look at a game that, for me, we kind of talk about it internally, and we have some fun in the back with the Hub team. And Jay always asks, who's your 2 Super Bowl teams? Who's your two Super Bowl teams? I've been saying for weeks, I think it's Buffalo against Detroit. And who do they play this week? Buffalo at Detroit. So Super Bowl preview game, really kind of interesting matchup. You look at Buffalo, and their struggles haven't been at home. They've been on the road. They've lost on the road. Detroit's only lost this year at home to Tampa Bay. But Detroit comes into this game, open a 2.5-point favorite. Numbers come down to 2. I'm not sure that you can make the total high enough in this game. We saw the Buffalo Ram game, how many points were scored. We know Detroit has that same kind of offense with Williams and St. Brown and Montgomery and Gibbs and Laporta. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored here. We're going to be under fans, but I don't know if we're going to get it or not. But for me, this is definitely a Super Bowl preview.
Well, and the thing with the Lions is these 4th down conversions. Scoring 2 touchdowns last week against the Packers on 4th downs, in field goal range with a chance to win the game on a 4th and 1, and they go for it, and then end up hitting the field goal subsequently to win it. But he could have won He could have won the game with the field goal, but he would have given the Packers 50 seconds to go down, and he elected not to do that. So Dan Campbell's aggressiveness on 4th down
he's never changed though from losing to the Niners in last year's NFC Championship game. His mantra hasn't changed. I mean, that's the way he plays.
And that's what leads to these high totals. If he's going to continuously go for these aggressive 4th downs to get those touchdowns and not settle for field goals, and obviously Buffalo's going to have that same mentality with the way that Josh Allen is playing right now, to continue to go for it, because Detroit's going to go for it, and this game is not going to be won by who's kicking field goals. It's going to be won by who can score those touchdowns. So I look for both of these teams to be very, very aggressive on 4th down. In particular, in between the 40s, we'll see who goes for it and who doesn't. But again, this Lions team at home, they've been in these games that you've watched them play these close games, and they just find a way.
Yep.
They've been able to find a way, and with what the Bills did on defense last week, you have to question, how do they recover so quickly in a back-to-back week here of watching Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp pick them apart, to now going into
St. Brown and Williams, Laporta.
Not necessarily 2 of the same quality receivers as what we see in LA, but again, the openness of what the Lions can do, how well they can play, and then adding Gibbs and Montgomery, specifically Gibbs out of the backfield.
Right.
You just wonder what the Bills are going to have to do to stand up, and I don't know if they can, and I think that's why this total, we see it so very, very high, is these teams just going to go back and forth with each other.
The number has come down a little bit, though. I think as an industry, there was a lot of 2.5s out there. You're seeing more 2s right now. You look at Buffalo again, and so dominant at home. I know we talked about it over the last few weeks. Nobody's going to want to go to Orchard Park to play in Buffalo. But now they're in a situation where they trail the Chiefs by the 2 games, although they own tiebreakers. But all 3 of their losses this year have been on the road. So they haven't been as dominant. So this is maybe an opportunity for Detroit again in the Dome, but I think you're going to see so many points scored here. It's going to be a fun game to watch. It might be last team that has the ball wins, but I think an interesting prop would be over or under 1.5 field goals, because these teams are not going to be kicking field goals.
You talk about it being a high-scoring game. There is a chance that this game could be an easily under game, and that's if these two teams really look to drive home the running game. Obviously, the Detroit Lions with the Montgomery and Gibbs running game, they could look to run, slow the game down to keep Josh Allen off the field. And on the flip side, the Bills can do the same thing. We've seen those games where it's James Cook, and Allen doesn't fling the ball around to these guys. So that could be I don't see it. I see both of these coaches having this as a game they want to really do something. But you talked about a Super Bowl preview, and could these be teams looking ahead? Again, they're both in a playoff situation. They're going to make the playoffs, where they don't want to show everything to the other side. They don't want to put everything on tape.
You can't
and it could be more of a running game.
I mean, Detroit's got Philadelphia right on their tail. You hate to lose,
and I don't see that in Dan Campbell's mode.
Right.
He's all in every game.
And I think Buffalo, knowing that right now, they're probably going to have to play a playoff game on the road at some point, that they want to make sure they don't lose again, because Pittsburgh is right there with them as well. So right behind Kansas City, you've got Pittsburgh and Buffalo vying for that number 2 spot in the AFC. So I don't think they can afford to really stub their toe here.
Don't call me crazy if this game happens to be short passes, ball control that clock and slow it down and limit the number of possessions that the other side has.
And I don't disagree. The last 5 times that these teams have played, all 5 times it has gone under. Granted, there's some history there, but the thing is you're right, but a screen pass to Gibbs or a screen pass to Cook, they can take it to the house at any time, which I think is why you see that total as high as it is. Let's look at a couple of other games that we're going to jump on. This game in the AFC, to me, is a huge game. It's the Colts at the Broncos. Colts are clearly chasing the Broncos for that last wild card spot. Colts are 6-7. Broncos are 8-5. Broncos come into this game a 4-point favorite. I think what's interesting here is when you look at strength of schedule and how it can work out, the Colts almost have to win this game and then get some help down the stretch. If they lose this game, and then they'll now have lost tiebreakers to Denver, I don't think there's a path for them to be a wild card team. But if they can win this game, I think it really kind of opens up maybe Miami to make a run, Indy to make a run, and make it really interesting with Denver for that last wild card spot.
Yeah, Denver's an interesting team. I mean, at the beginning of the year, when you looked at this team, we didn't know how they were going to win, 3 or 4 football games, and now we're sitting with them as we said today, a playoff team,
7th team,
and a team that is scary because what that defensive does to a passing game with Surtain, and them able to shut down opposing passers, and then they have the kind of a 3-headed monster at running back. Bo Nix isn't making mistakes. He's found a new love in Cortland Sutton and getting him the football. So Denver's a scary team, and this is, to me, them off the bye week with a Sean Payton, again, one of those veteran coaches that knows what to do in the bye week, knows how to come off a bye week, knows how to attack the other team off the bye week. And I look at it more of a standpoint of how do the Colts, again, that indoor team, travel out to Denver, to the altitude, to the weather, and then to that pass defense with Anthony Richardson is kind of not that he's Jameis Winston 2.0, but I look at him a little bit.
Jekyll and Hyde.
I look at him as a guy that makes some bad mistakes. He takes some bad sacks. He has ability to fumble, and he throws some really bad interceptions. And it seems like the Broncos, that's what they feast on. And we saw it in the Monday night game against the Browns. And I can see that again here, where we see the Colts making mistakes. And again, we're probably not going to be with the Colts are going to be without Josh Downs again in this game, a key receiver, a possession receiver for them. So they've got the outside receivers, the big guy receivers, but those are the guys the Broncos continuously have been able to shut down. It's the possession receivers that you need to kind of go beat the Broncos.
And you really have to love Sean Payton. I mean, he got a clone of Drew Brees. He got a quarterback in Bo Nix that was a little bit of an older quarterback. He had transferred in college and had more experience there, but he's a guy that doesn't make mistakes. He's got the big arm. He's more of a pocket passer, and he's just played exactly like Sean Payton wants him to play. They had talked about dealing Cortland Sutton. Remember, they traded Jerry Jeudy. Jeudy got a new contract. He's become the guy for Jameis Winston in Cleveland right now. But this Denver offense really revolves around Bo Nix and him making good decisions, which he's made a lot of good decisions so far this year.
Yeah, and you brought up Jerry Jeudy. Obviously, the Denver Broncos did not do a good job of covering Jerry Jeudy on his return to Denver 2 weeks weeks ago. So they need to fix that. But that secondary has been solid all year long into stopping opponent wide receivers.
So a couple interesting stats here. In their history, Indy is 5-1 against the spread in the last 6 games when they've played on the road against Denver. But the two that kind of jump off the page to me, Denver 6-1 against the spread in their last 7 games, and 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 home games. So as Jay mentioned, going into that altitude and that cold, it really has favored this Bronco team over the course of the season. Another matchup now that's featuring 2 teams that are currently in the playoffs, and that's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers playing at the LA Chargers. And I think what's interesting here is that the Bucs now are in first place in the NFC South. But they don't own tiebreakers against the Falcons, who have beat them twice this year. The Chargers are that team that has been a really surprise this year. We talked about Denver, Kansas City. Now you have the Chargers, 3 teams from the AFC West that are probably going to make the playoffs right now. This is a big game for both those teams. You look at Atlanta, who plays on Monday night against the Raiders here in Vegas. They're a favorite. They probably should win. If Tampa loses, Atlanta wins, Atlanta goes back into first place. This is a big game for Tampa to maybe try to kind of steal a game in L.A.
Yeah, and the Chargers have been kind of that slow-paced, don't make mistakes team, and they win games late, and that defense has been absolutely fantastic. Herbert is a little bit banged up here. We've seen this team really kind of suffer some injuries. McConkey didn't play last week against the Chiefs. They lose Will Dissly, their tight end, last week. They've already lost J.K. Dobbins, so they're really doing this with a lack of pieces of the puzzle. And they should have almost beat the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City last week. So again, you can see what Harbaugh has brought to that franchise in keeping them in games, playing well, not having the bad turnovers. And this Tampa team, again, this is to me, the Chargers are the better team. However, they're banged up and hurt. And Tampa has Mike Evans.
You think about Tampa, though, and the games that they lost. I mean, they probably should have beaten Kansas City. There was a couple of games in there that they were playing really good teams. And don't forget, Detroit's only loss is to Tampa. So I think they're a better team than their record shows.
But 2 weeks ago, Tampa should have lost to Carolina. If Carolina, scores.
But a lot of teams should have lost to Carolina, and they find a way to lose.
Tampa misses a field goal. Carolina drives it down to the 25 and fumbles.
Right.
And Tampa gets the ball back and goes. So it's a week-to-week thing, as is every week in the NFL. You get up, and then you go down. You get up, and Tampa is fighting. You talked about it, chasing the Falcons or ahead of the Falcons.
Ahead of the Falcons right now, right
on the road. But again, I don't know from a consistency basis. Bucky Irving again banged up for them. We've seen Rashad White have good games, but these are the things that Charger defense kind of suffocates the running games. This game is going to be, for me, if the Bucs are going to win this game, it's going to have to be on Baker Mayfield's arm. And unfortunately, when you put it all on Baker Mayfield's arm, now it's him dropping back, and that pass rush is going to get to him. They've got a chance if Evans can go have the big game.
Yep.
Mike Evans can have the big game. I think they can play in this game, but I think that the methodical Chargers offense with a healthy Herbert without making mistakes, I think they just grind out a win here against these Tampa Bay Bucs.
I think, not to get off the topic, but I think when you look at a quarterback like Baker Mayfield and even Sam Darnold, the fact that these guys had kind of bounced around on their third and fourth teams, that it shows you how difficult it is for some of these young quarterbacks. I mean, he had his struggles. Baker Mayfield did in Cleveland. We know Darnold had his struggles with the Jets and then became a backup in San Francisco. But sometimes it really takes these guys, 3, 4, 5 years to kind of figure it all out. But both these guys have been tremendous with the 2 teams that they're playing for right now.
I'm so much less in that it's the quarterback that leads to the success. I mean,
I know, right?
When you talk about a guy like Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, obviously what they can do on the field, it's tough to stop.
You're talking about coaching in the system,
Lamar Jackson. But it's the coaching staff that you have, the offensive coordinator, and the team philosophy. And when you talk about Minnesota, whether it was Kirk Cousins there or it's Sam Darnold there or whoever it's going to be, I just think that Minnesota system with the receivers and what they've got planned, you're going to have success. And I look at on the flip side, I look at the Arizona Cardinals and Kyler Murray, and they get a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. and you have McBride, and they can't have consistent success. And I don't think that it's Kyler Murray. I think it's the offensive play calling. I think it's the design of the routes. When you have a Marvin Harrison Jr. Draft at the top of that draft, I think he's now 7 of the last 8 games where he's had under 60 yards receiving.
Right.
And he doesn't ever catch the ball going
This way.
down the field.
Right.
There's never a route that Marvin Harrison Jr. catches the ball where he's running, towards an end zone. Everything is with his back turned, looking at Kyler Murray and trying to catch the football.
The game he did have the balls like that, and he had, I think, the 3 touchdowns. 2 of them were long plays.
Does Justin Jefferson, how many passes does he have going down the field? How many passes does Nico Collins catch going down the field? How many catches does CeeDee Lamb have going down the field? We're seeing Cooper Rush, move the ball. It's not a player thing. It's a coaching and it's a system thing. And again, players make the difference, but there's teams that are failing because of their play calling and their coaching. And I think that's why we see so many teams at the bottom of the league, so many teams fighting for that number 1 draft pick, and the number 1 draft pick's not going to make a difference unless they get a coaching change. And you talk about that with the Chicago Bears, with a number 1 pick that's not having an uber amount of success. However, you are talking about Jalen Daniels in Washington, who's having a good. Now he's come back to earth a little bit, but a good level of success with a different kind of Cliff Kingsbury offense in mind there.
Right. Well, I think you look at even like Caleb Williams is that he has set the rookie record for the most consecutive games without an interception. He has set the rookie record for the most attempts without an interception. He's also set like every Bears rookie quarterback record. But you're right. I mean, he hasn't been. I mean, he's gone through a couple of coordinators now. He hasn't really been set up for success. That offensive line's been banged up. They have the coaching change. The raw tools are there for him and Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix and Michael Penix and these guys to really, and Drake May to succeed. You just need to have the right surrounding cast.
And when you talk about surrounding, answer this, and not, you don't have to answer on camera, but just think about it. If we talked about Caleb Williams being the number 1 pick, Bo Nix fell down, 11, 10, wherever he was drafted by the Broncos. If we flip that and we put Bo Nix on the Bears right now and we put Caleb Williams on the Broncos, what kind of season is Caleb Williams having in this system that the Broncos have created for Bo Nix? And so, again, you saw the talent. The talent was there for Caleb Williams, but he just wasn't put in the same system to have the success. And that's where I think, analyzing this talent, I think you have to start to ask yourself, what kind of offense are they in, and who are the offensive coordinators, and what is their play calling? Because I consistently watch these games every week, and the play calling for certain teams doesn't lead to success for their quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's a debate that we could have for hours and talk about it. All right, we're going to look at now the Sunday night game, which I think is a really intriguing matchup. You've got the Packers against Seattle. These two teams have played some great primetime games before with miracle Hail Marys at the end of the game, but it's a Seattle team that, for me, is one of the biggest surprises in all the league. They're 8-5. It didn't matter with Kenny Walker was out. Charbonnet stepped right up. You've got young receivers that are playing good. Geno's playing good. Mike McDaniel's doing a great job in his first year there. The Packers, they're going to be a wild card team. They're not going to catch Detroit. Jordan Love hasn't had a 300-yard passing game since week 4. He's got 4 receivers he kind of spreads it out to. The real difference maker has been Josh Jacobs. I think over the last 4 weeks, 8 rushing touchdowns. He's been that difference maker. They're a small favorite on the road in Seattle. I think it's a much bigger game for Seattle to kind of hold serve in the NFC West and stay ahead of San Francisco, Arizona, and the Rams. Green Bay, I think we already know they're a wild card team, but they are the favorite on Sunday night in Seattle.
Yeah, and we talked about, obviously, on Thursday night with the Rams and Niners chasing this Seattle team, how big a game it is for both of them, and they're both praying that Seattle can get knocked off by Green Bay or Minnesota, who visits Seattle.
But a very tough place to play with the weather,
absolutely,
the 12th man.
It's Sunday night. The likelihood that we're going to be in some cold, probably with some drizzle, potentially even snow flurries, is probably pretty high as we talk about Seattle in December. But you talk about Jordan Love and the lack of the downfield, the lack of the big passing game, and it's been Jaden Reed being out of this game.
And Dobbs has been hurt.
Yeah, they just haven't been healthy. Wicks and Kraft, he's got these other, but I think it's the addition of Josh Jacobs to this Packers team that's made them a lot more balanced. And I think they had more success last year when they were kind of without the running back and it had to go to Love to air it out. But now the balanced offense, I think, is somewhat hurting that downfield big play capability because they are kind of a more grinded out tight team.
Maybe it's
and Love doesn't have those shots downfield that he's been taking
it's the
what
fact
we saw last year.
All 4 of those wide receivers are kind of interchangeable, and you don't have that alpha dog.
Well, I think
maybe that's part of it.
Christian Watson is that guy that's the downfield threat, and normally we see him drop one of these big touchdown passes down the field each and every game.
I wasn't going to say that,
on
but
the flip side, though, when you talk about, we just got off the conversation of quarterbacks that are having success, and I don't think that Geno Smith would be a guy that we would say is an elite talent in today's NFL quarterback.
Who leads the league in yards?
My God, they are absolutely flinging it around, and he is putting up incredible stats. And it's not so much DK Metcalf, but it's Jackman Smith-Njigba, who's been absolutely fantastic from a possession receiver standpoint, from a third down receiver standpoint. He's the guy that he goes after and targets. And then you sprinkle in some Tyler Lockett every once in a while, and Walker and Charbonnet last week against the Cardinals was absolutely fantastic. So you talk about teams with all kinds of offensive weapons. Seattle's a scary team when you look at the number of offensive weapons they have.
And it's a tough place to play. So if they do win the NFC West, they're going to at least get one home playoff game there, even if it's against a Green Bay or a Minnesota. This could be a rematch of maybe a prelude to a playoff game between one of these two teams. But they're very good at home.
They are a dog here, and the reason for that is, again, that defense is still beatable. We'll say that the offense has to be fantastic. Geno Smith can't turn the ball over, but that defense can be leaky. And again, with the Packers and Love and Jacobs, they could find that way to grind it out and make those key stops against Seattle, find a way to win here.
I think it's a really interesting matchup on Sunday night too. I think we'll be Seattle fans when the game kicks off, but it wouldn't surprise me that we see some Seahawk money show too. Now we're going to go to Monday Night Football, and I'm going to channel my inner Ernie Banks, and you guys will know that I'm older then. But it's what did he always say? Let's play two. What do we get on Monday Night Football? Week 15, Monday night doubleheader. And the first game happens to be our Chicago Bears against the Minnesota Vikings. These two teams played 3 weeks ago. Bears were down double digits almost the entire game. Managed to come back and get an onside kick and make a field goal to get this game into overtime. They lose in overtime. Vikings come into this game a 7-point favorite in a game that they want to keep winning. I mean, Vikings are 11-2. I mean, they're really right behind the Lions as well. And I think their only loss to the Lions this year was by 2 points. So Lions, that's why the Lions can't really afford to stub their toe in any game, because there's teams right behind them in Philly and Minnesota. Bears are a 7-point underdog here against the Minnesota Vikings in a game that's on prime time. Thomas Brown gets his second head coaching game, lost at San Francisco. But it's a young Bear team that I think you just want to see progress. You want to see Rome Odunze and DJ Moore and Swift and Kmet grow with Caleb Williams here, and we'll see what they can do on Monday night.
Yeah, and we talked about earlier the adjustment from the Bears playing the Niners, being bet last week as a 3-point dog in San Francisco, and now go on the road as a 7-point dog to Minnesota. So they seem to earn the bettors and handicappers respect with the close loss to Minnesota, the close loss to Detroit, the coaching change, obviously feeling like the team was going to get up behind this Bears team and find a way to finally go win a game as they've been so competitive. And then they went out to San Francisco and really kind of laid an egg.
You're forgetting one thing, that the Bears cannot win a road game on a Sunday.
But it's Monday. And again, interdivision, go and lose to Detroit, fire your coaches, go out to San Francisco, now come and play another divisional opponent. And so normally that sandwich between two divisional opponents tends to be a tough game. Obviously, that's what it was in San Francisco. But I think it was a little bit more within the coaching change, within Brown having to go from offensive coordinator to head coach, trying to figure things out. But again, they get a divisional opponent that they're comfortable with here, a team that obviously they just played a couple weeks ago and played them really, really tough. I'm surprised that it's up to a touchdown favorite. And I think that's because we see the Minnesota getting kind of overvalued with a win over Atlanta, who has really struggled the last several weeks with Kirk Cousins. I think he's now four games now with 0 touchdown passes and 8 interceptions. And his return to Minnesota with the Atlanta Falcons, I think kind of inspired that Minnesota Vikings team, that they weren't going to let Kirk Cousins go pick on them. So I always talk about a team getting an emotional high, and I think the Vikings were in one of those situations last week where they played a really, really emotional high game. I love the touchdown celebrations from the defense, pulling out the white chick stances, and it was awesome from that standpoint. But I think the Vikings were off an emotional high, and now this can be obviously a divisional opponent, but I think that this is a tough spot to lay 7 points with the Vikings, and I look for this Bears team to play better on offense, and what they found in the second half in the home game to trying to continue continue to exploit that
Flores
here, hopefully starting off the game.
Flores has done such a good job as their defensive coordinator that everybody expected in that first meeting in Chicago that he'd put a lot of pressure on Caleb Williams, blitz him, and that was the case in the first half. But Caleb did have a lot of success in the second half, but in the Dome, in Minnesota, it's going to be awfully loud. There's going to be a lot of pressure on him. Anxious to see who made the bigger adjustment now, Minnesota's defense or the Bears' offense, to see who has the advantage going into that game.
Caleb Williams leads the NFL in sacks, and it just keeps getting to where he gives up the 4 and 5 each week, and obviously
7 last week.
Minnesota is going to continue to attack. You talked about that defense going after him, and so he's going to have to clean that up. He's going to have to get rid of the ball earlier, or they're going to have to find the hot routes and get rid of the ball in some quick passes.
The Bears have been able to score points at home, but not on the road. 8 of their last 9 road games, the total has gone under. Minnesota is 5-0 straight up in their last 5 games, and Minnesota is 6-1 straight up in their last 7 games when playing the Bears. So just a couple of interesting betting trends, especially that under trend as far as the Bears on the road. Now we're going to look at Game 2 of the Monday Night Doubleheader in our own backyard. Jay touched on Kirk Cousins a little bit. Kirk Cousins in his last 4 games, this is Falcons against the Raiders. Cousins, 4 interception in every game and no touchdown passes in his last 4 games. It's hard to believe with those weapons that he has on offense that no touchdown passes in 4 games. We talked about it. They now trail Tampa in the NFC South. They're in second place in that division. Very winnable game for them. The Raiders, they're the Raiders. I mean, they've got one of the, I think maybe the longest losing streak in the NFL right now. Just not playing good. Struggle on both sides of the ball. They are at home, though, on Monday night. We'll see what can happen.
I think we're going to see the Atlanta Falcons finally get healthy, as most teams
and have a passing touchdown
tend to do against the Raiders. Yes, Kirk Cousins will have 2. I'll bet the over 2 passing touchdowns for Kirk Cousins this week, and that's who the Raiders are. No. They're fighting. They're playing hard. They just don't have the tools.
They've lost 9 in a row. Atlanta's lost 4 in a row. So both teams trending the wrong way.
You feel like the New York Giants and the Raiders, as surprising the Jacksonville gets the win at Tennessee to take themselves out of potentially that first round pick. We feel like this Giants team and the Raiders are fighting for who's going to get that number 1 overall selection. And do they really want to win the games? However, I mean, the way the Raiders lose to the Chiefs and is a devastating loss there. But to come home against this Falcons team that, again, can find a way to win the division, still in this thing, to be able to earn a home playoff game by winning the division.
But you think about the Falcons, Jamie, they've lost 4 in a row. They were clearly in control of the NFC South, and they've really struggled.
Yeah, and it's been clearly on the shoulders of Kirk Cousins and his interception. We talked about zero touchdown passes to 8 interceptions. I think he cleans this up this week. I think he finds Pitts, London. I look for a big game out of Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier. They do have kind of those. You talk about the tools in the shed. They do have those names with their offensive weapons, and I think those guys find a way to have a decent game this week. Sincere McCormick, we'll call him my cousin, the running back for the Raiders. I think he's been absolutely fantastic these last couple weeks, and I think with Mattson being out, Amir Abdullah kind of the guy running the ball, actually catching the more out of the backfield. But McCormick's been kind of a hammer out of the backfield.
He's been great, yeah,
and something that maybe the Raiders look to develop with a guy that's running the football well and has seen that he can maybe carry the load, not necessarily a third down back, but that first and second round back, he's really done a good job of running between the tackles.
Don't know how the Sunday is going to completely shake out with the games, but my guess is we're clearly going to be Bear and Raider fans come Monday night. Just a couple of interesting betting trends with this one. Atlanta 5-0 straight up in their last 5 games when playing Vegas. The total has gone over in 6 of Vegas's last 7 home games. So to Jay's point, where maybe Atlanta's offense kind of gets healthy and rich again, that this is a great opportunity for them to do that, because trends would say that you're going to see some points scored on Monday night.
Yeah, not only NFL. One of the things that's been going on this week is the NBA Cup. Actually here in Las Vegas. We saw the 2 games last night. We've got 2 more. We'll see the completion on Saturday. But again, a lot of excitement around the NBA Cup. Kind of an odd week in the NBA with the NBA Cup leading to then the Friday and Sunday games with the rest of the teams in the league. But if you get a chance, take advantage of these NBA Cup games here in Las Vegas. Some actually good basketball and college basketball and women's college basketball and NHL hockey. The schedule is absolutely fantastic. If you haven't gotten the app, we've got all kinds of props, the games, the live betting, and we still have the up to $50 no-worry wager available on the app for all new signups.
One more thing is that baseball has the winter meetings going on right now. Right on the eve of the winter meetings, who made the big move, and that was Juan Soto signing with the Mets. We've got a home run prop up on Juan Soto. Max Fried yesterday signs with the Yankees. Looks like there's going to be a lot of movement over the next 72 hours. So check the app, look at future book odds, and see what's going on, not only for the odds, but for some props that we're going to look to put up with all these guys moving forward. So for Jason, I'm Chucky for the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends. We'll see you guys next week here at Red Rock.